one of the key things that a lot of people don't consider is your business will succeed at the level of your least disciplined behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So your business will succeed at your least disciplined behavior. So there's certain behaviors that your business just won't do well if you're not executing on them,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whatever that might be, whatever business you're running, whatever you're selling, whatever you're doing, there are core functions that you must do. And there are one of them that you're not doing that well. You just aren't, right? We all aren't, right? I mean, I can look at any of the businesses I run and there are some of them that could be performing better. And part of the reason not performing better is because there's a particular behavior I don't like to do and haven't figured out who to outsource this to, who likes to do it better than I do, right? So I have to do it, so I avoid it.
Hi guys, welcome back to the EcomXFactor podcast. Today's guest is Kyle Sanders. Kyle is an entrepreneur, endurance athlete, and a father of three. This talk was quite unique since we covered topics that we don't usually talk about, such as moral, values, the importance of money, and other philosophical questions. During the talk, Kyle shared why he started running ultramarathons and why he thinks being an entrepreneur is kind of like being a long-distance runner, the importance of discipline and humility, common misconceptions about leadership, money, and what's really important in life. I'm sure you guys will enjoy this talk, so here we go.
Welcome to the EcomXFactor podcast, where it's all about launching and scaling your business using sales funnels, automations, and smart marketing. And now, please welcome your host, the founder of EcomXFactor, Yaron Bin.
Hi Kyle, how are you doing?
Hi, I am wonderful. Thank you so much for having me on and letting me be part of your story, being part of this conversation.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing your story because it piqued my curiosity. I tried to run a marathon when I was in the army, but I didn't. I wasn't humble enough, so I got injured. But I'm looking forward to hearing your story. So maybe you can share a bit about your story.
Yeah, so I've been a ultra endurance athlete for a good part of my adult life. I kind of stumbled into it. I've taken some breaks away from it as my wife and I started having a family. But now my hobby is running ultra marathons, so which is any distance longer than the 26.2 marathon. So I've ran 4 ultra marathons, 3 50Ks and a 50-mile ultra marathon, along with doing I did a 36-hour endurance event where I climbed up the same mountain 17 consecutive times till I climbed the equivalent of Mount Everest. So I climbed 29,029 vertical feet in 31 hours.
Wow. What went through your head when you did this?
I love that question. So one of the things that a lot of people do is they spend time in meditation. Mm-hmm. They get tuned in internally and they use meditation as a way to quiet the mind, what's often called the monkey mind, if you will, and really trying to get tuned into who they are as humans. And there's multiple ways to do that. You can sit quietly in a room and just meditate. I find meditation, with the sound of my feet hitting the ground. And so to me, what the most beautiful thing that can go through my mind is there's periods of time where nothing goes through my mind. I truly get to a state of spiritual connection and understand and learn who I am at a level deeper than I have before.
Mm-hmm. And how did you dive into this world?
Yeah, so I dove into it mistakenly. Like not as in like, hey, I thought I was going to the grocery store and suddenly I ran a marathon. Like that's not what I mean by mistakenly. But I went out. It was early just to get back in shape. I'd gotten married, and I was like, I've got the girl, and then I kind of like stopped working out and put on some weight, and then I looked in the mirror and said, well, that's extraordinarily unfair for her to have to look at a guy who looks like that for the rest of her life, And so I went out for a run. To me, it was really efficient. and went out for a run and came back, and I looked like a tomato that was stuck. I looked like a sunburned tomato, candidly. And I kept running and went out and ran my first 5K and finished in the top 10% of the entire thing. Like I ran 21-minute 5K, which is about my very first one, and went, okay, well, that was kind of cool. I wonder if I can run a half marathon. And so I went out and the following spring ran 13.1 and finished it in an hour and 39 and finished across the finish line. I was running I sprinted the finish line. Like I was running about a 6:40 pace to finish the thing and went, oh, okay. Like there was more left in my legs. So I just stayed curious. It's been a journey of curiosity. And so when I ran my first marathon that fall, I was very curious and just curious what I can do, curious how far I can go. And so, I didn't even discover what ultramarathon running was until I was training for the endurance event up the mountain thing that I mentioned. And in training for that, one of the things that was go out and run 6 times in one day, go out and do 6 runs. And it was time-based, go run for an hour, go run for an hour and a half. And so cumulatively over that time, I ran 31 miles. And I reached out to the coach and said, hey, I don't know how far we're supposed to go. I did 31 miles. Is that good? How am I doing? Am I going to be ready for this event? It's like, wait, you went and ran a 50K? And I'm like, yeah, what's a 50K? It's like, it's the shortest ultra marathon. Yeah. And I felt great. I felt all this euphoria. It was incredible. It had gone further than 26.2, which I'd done before this. And so it's just been a state of curiosity and wondering how far can I go and how deep are my reserves physically as a human being and mentally as a human being.
Interesting. And did you do this always as part of a team or with a coach, or how does the training look like?
Yeah. So I just did, so my last ultra marathon I ran was on October 3rd. I ran 50 miles that day consecutively all the training took me 6 months in training. And I did it all self. Like I didn't, I downloaded a training schedule and I went and I read a lot, like mainly on nutrition. But other than that, I trained for it. Don't know if that was the best methodology because I got injured a little bit along the way. That maybe a coach would have been a good value add. But yeah, I went out and ran it.
Nice.
I ran an obscene amount of miles last year but I got to the finish line and it was a really special moment. That's for sure.
Amazing. Yeah. I told you before we went live that I did my first bodybuilding show last year. And for me, it was more than just bodybuilding. So for me, bodybuilding is a microcosmos of the world, and the principle that I learned in bodybuilding can be implemented also in business. So yes. I'm assuming that you feel the same. So what did you learn from running ultramarathons that can be implemented in business or mindset or leadership?
Yeah, 100%. And I think here's my opinion, right, is that entrepreneurs should have something on their plate, on their calendar each year that's going to scare the current version of themselves, right? So if you don't put something on your calendar, you go, ooh, like that's going to be hard. Well, entrepreneurship is hard. It's challenging. It's going to ask more of you tomorrow than it did today. The current version of you is going to produce the results of your business. Yeah. If you want to grow your business, grow yourself as a human. So I learned a lot. Like number one, I'm more gritty than I realized. Like I ran the 50-mile ultra marathon with a partially torn plantar fasciitis. So the tendon that hooks your calf to your foot was partially torn. Wow. And I just had surgery last Friday. I literally didn't realize it. I'm like, and then afterwards, I'm like, why isn't this getting better? Why isn't this getting better? Because I thought I'm running 70 miles a week. Of course I hurt. Of course I'm sore. Of course things don't feel right. What do you expect? Right. Sure. And so I just kept going and I kept going. Well, now like my definition of hard, my definition of difficult, my definition, I set the bar. I reset the bar of what actually is hard. So when things go difficult here in my business that I run, like I don't show up the same way. I don't respond the same way. So I fundamentally believe whether it's bodybuilding and, you got to eat, 13 chickens a day and, worth of protein. And I mean, it's just insane what you put your body through, and you're eating, 500 calories or 600 calories less than what you burned. And your body's getting super lean. And I mean, that's hard stuff.
Yeah.
Your body's scream at you, like, go eat a milkshake, right? Or go grab some bread or something, right? And you don't do it.
Yeah.
So when your life requires discipline for you individually now, discipline's easier to come by because you put that in your pocket and you're like, I've done something that's hard. So, the biggest takeaway that I got from running an ultra marathon is the impact and power of discipline. And I've redefined what hard is.
Interesting. And do you feel that the fact that you use the discipline, is discipline a perishable resource? Because for me, it was hard also to do like the bodybuilding and also grow the business. So how do you combine growing the business with running, for example? Do you feel that that they collide?
Yeah, man, I love that question. So yeah, there were things in my life that maybe could have used some additional attention last year. I don't know if it's discipline, right? So I grew my business by 50% last year. And I've been running the same business for 20 years. So, I didn't grow it from a small base. I grew it from a pretty substantial base.
Nice.
So, but I think the thing that really got neglected last year was actually rest. I mean, I was burning the candle every end. I was going hard in every aspect of my life. And I was pretty burned out. No question at the end of it. I went into the end of last year pretty wrung out. So I think there was more room for rest. And I think often, it's like, how many hours did you work last week? I mean, that's the, how many hours, and it's like, the body, we're not machines. And so I think the thing that got really cattywampus for me last year was just the rest, sleep. I had one particular day where I didn't sleep well. You were talking about how, before we hit record, how the diet messed with your sleep, and, you still had to work out, right? And you weren't sleeping well. And, I did a 26-mile run on 1 hour of sleep last year,
wow.
Which was I would not recommend that to your audience. Don't go do that. You can, but it's just ill-advised. So I don't know if it's discipline. It's just, there's only so much room. And for entrepreneurs, what's often pushed aside is self-care. It's rest and it's nutrition and it's things of that nature. And you'll remember this is a marathon. It's really an ultra marathon. Entrepreneurship is. It's really the long game. And don't run yourself into the ground too early that you don't get across the finish line. Pick a sustainable pace. I don't know if I picked one last year.
And when did you realize that you were kind of burnt out? Because for me, after the bodybuilding show, I'm sorry that I'm referring to the bodybuilding show so often, but I feel that it's kind of similar journey.
It's super relevant. It's super relevant. Yeah, 100%.
So I was in a euphoria. I don't know how to pronounce it in English. Euphoric.
Yeah, euphoria.
Euphoric. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You're doing great.
For like 2 months, and I said, okay, I'm all good. I'm still happy. But after like 3 months, I realized I was burned out, and I had to pick a new project, and I felt like something was missing. So yes. I'm wondering, how did you feel after you hit a huge project? On one hand, you want to rest and you want to celebrate and smell the roses. But on the other hand, if you don't have a new goal, you might find yourself in trouble.
Yeah, that's a great question. I was actually talking to a good friend of mine, Charlie Engel. Charlie is he actually ran across the Sahara Desert.
Wow.
And so he's ran across the United States. He's done all these, amazing ultra endurance events. And he warned me. He kind of came in late into the picture last year for the event. So he wasn't training me and coaching me along the way. We became friends towards the end of the year. And he's like, hey, just as a heads up, you might be a little depressed after you finish this thing. What? He's like, you're going to have this big Like you've been working for 6-7 months and getting ready for this thing,
Mm-hmm.
and that's really how long I was training for 7+ months,
Mm-hmm.
and then in a moment it's over. And how are you going to feel about that? And so I think we have to give ourselves grace and space for that and recognize that, it's okay. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
okay to take a moment, reflect on what you've done. I'm a big believer in journaling, right? What did you learn, and taking those notes and having something to reflect upon so you don't leave the lessons
Mm-hmm.
of what you did. So I did an audio journal. I did a episode. The
Oh,
lessons I learned after running 50 miles, right, is one of
nice.
my solo podcast episodes.
Cool.
So for me, I let my voice be the pen,
Mm-hmm.
and documented those feelings for me to come back and listen to down the road, and where I was and where my mindset was, so I can go back to there. But yeah, I think that's common. I mean, my goodness, like,
For sure.
what, like you individually, like what you achieved,
Mm-hmm.
right? Win or not, but to put the body through that and to be willing to have the discipline to say no, like I believe that freedom is truly at the end of discipline. For every entrepreneur that's listening to this conversation, like if you want to grow your business, like here's two guys, two different sports, right? But the key ingredient is discipline. Discipline is let you get to where you got last year. Discipline is what let me get to where I got last year. And it's very transferable to business. And so you don't necessarily need to be a bodybuilder or an ultra marathon runner to learn how to be disciplined. They're great pathways, right? Maybe for you individually, it's a 10K. Maybe it's a half marathon. Maybe it's just getting up and working out, 6 out of 7 days a week. But it's a key ingredient. So no, I think what you're sharing is extraordinarily relatable and very, very, that's the link. It's discipline. It's
Yeah.
discipline.
I agree, and I also I don't know if you saw it, but Michael Phelps he did a documentary about his. It was about they call it a post-Olympic depression. So
Yes.
it's something apparently that people talk about, like after the Olympics. So a lot of athletes they have like a depression. Some even
Yes.
committed suicide, which was very horrifying to see. But people just after such a huge event they lack purpose, or at least they feel that they lack a purpose. So it's kind of
Yeah. I read there's a book called The Jersey Effect.
Mhm.
And it was written by a former NFL National Football League here, like American football.
Yeah.
Yeah, that you're 8 times more likely to commit suicide the minute
Mhm.
you sign a professional contract for any
Oh.
sport. Yeah. And it really comes down to what you're speaking of, right? Is that we tie our identity so much to this goal,
Mhm.
right? Who we are, like, who are you? Like, I'm an Olympian. I'm an Olympic athlete, right? Like that you just answered that question so many times.
Mhm.
Or, the Olympics comes every 4 years, right?
Mhm.
And, if you miss it, like you miss that top of the medal, gold medal, podium moment, you got to wait until the 4 years to get it done. And there's people who maybe they got 2 Olympics in them, 3 if they're lucky.
Yeah.
4 is just unheard of, right? So you get 4 shots your entire life to achieve this thing. And let's say you achieve or you don't achieve it, right? Brr, I can't even imagine.
No,
I can't even imagine, right?
I don't know what is better, by the way. Both are very challenging. Even if you get the gold, or if you don't get the gold, so both are challenging, I guess.
These are experiences I'm unlikely going to have,
For sure. Me
based
neither.
upon my physical capability, right? Like I got a long way before, in my speed, and that anyone's invited me to participate in the Olympic Games. Yeah, and I think that's such a relevant point in that
Mhm.
is, when we look at what makes a great entrepreneur, like what is that? Like what makes you a great entrepreneur? And I think one of the key things is that we identify internally, not externally. So those individuals, and my heart breaks for anybody who's gone through that, is they're identifying who they are by this external thing. Like they are the fastest man or woman in the world at some particular discipline, right? Well, when you're going to be a leader, which part of an entrepreneur, like if you're a successful entrepreneur at some point, you're likely going to have a team. You're going to need to lead people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you're looking for external validation of who you are as a person, it's really challenging to lead well if that's your modus of evaluating who you are.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you're somebody who says that I have value always, well, then you're going to be somebody who's going to be more comfortable taking risks. You're going to be somebody who's more comfortable with failure. You're going to be more comfortable with having difficult conversations because you're not seeking approval, which is part of leadership. And so I think there's some real relevance to this, is that, a lot of those folks who've gone through those difficult things is that they're looking for external validation for who they are as people.
Yeah.
And great leaders, that's just not how they operate.
Yeah, and it brings to mind, I'm not sure who says this, but output instead of outcome. So you should measure yourself based on what you did, not based on the results, because the results are the consequences of some factors, external factors. So
Correct.
So this is relates to what you said. And so what other principles do you think that in leaders today are lacking? Or when clients come to you, what do you feel that is a misconception in regards to leadership or or effective leadership?
Yeah. So right. So those are two different things, right? So, certainly one of them is discipline. Discipline's a big one, right? The other one is humility. It's humility. I think for a lot of people, it's one of the things, I share this, is that I hold very little to be true in life, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't hold on to absolutes any longer at this stage and phase of my life. There's, I often say that there's only two absolutes for me. One, that there is a God, and
Mm-hmm.
two, I am not him.
Nice.
Right? It's so humility to recognize that, the minute we think we know everything, you're done growing. And a key attribute of leadership is that you have to grow as a leader. You have to, because the people who are going to follow you you need them to grow. You need your team to grow. You need the people who are looking to you to grow. And if you aren't growing yourself, like if you aren't doing it, like how can you hold anybody accountable to do anything you're not willing to do yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And so, a key attribute of growing an organization is for the people within that organization to be growing as well. And so, for me, humility is a huge piece of it, because if you don't have humility, then you're going to say, well, I know it all. I got it all under control. I'm the best. Look at me. And number one, that's very, very off-putting for people to follow. And in addition, it is a huge barrier for your own personal development and growth. And so, a huge piece of that is humility. It's a huge piece. And I don't see that. I see a lot of people, they're very focused on, that perfect Instagram photograph, or they're airbrushing that Facebook post, or they're rewriting and writing and rewriting that post until they're airbrushing their whole lives.
Yeah.
And, I'll tell you right now that I am not by any stretch of the imagination a perfect leader. I've made mistakes along the way. I could guarantee you that I'll make some more the rest of this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what they're going to be, right? But I know I'm going to make them.
For sure.
I'm okay with that. I really am.
And how do you practice humility? How do you become? How do you? If it's, I assume it's not ingrained in people, and you're not born. You're not necessarily. It's something. It's a skill that you can develop. So how would you go about and try to develop this skill?
Yeah. So that's a great question. For me, there's a few things that I do to help with humility. One is that I have a daily habit of meditating on gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
And when I see how much I've been blessed with, how much is in my life beyond what I can see as my natural contributions to it. Like I was driving home with my wife the other day, and she was driving me back from having this little surgery on my foot, this little procedure. And I shared with her, I said, I see our kids and they're amazing. I've got 3 kids. I've got a 4th one coming, and I can see our contributions, right? But then there's this 20% that I just can't figure out where it came from. That's above and beyond what I feel that I have done, that I've contributed to. You could call that God. You can call that Yahweh. You can call that, whatever you want to call that. It's of no difference to me of what your faith reference that, what name you place upon that. But when you see the contribution of the creator or a creator or a higher power in your life, it changes that perspective. So first and foremost, I think a key ingredient of humility is recognizing that you didn't get here on your own, and having some aspect of faith in your life is integral to that. Gratitude and having a practice of gratitude and seeing those things daily helps you see that you aren't doing this alone and you aren't walking this journey alone. And so, maybe a little less chest pounding and selfies, and recognize that there's this great quote from a book called Course in Miracles. And it says, if you knew who walked beside you on this path in life that you have chosen, you'd never experience fear or doubt again. It's just the process of recognizing we don't walk alone. Nice. And that where you've gotten here is unlikely just due to your own contributions. That's a huge piece, and staying in gratitude to that truth.
Can you repeat the quote once again?
Yeah. So if you knew who walked beside you on this path in life that you have chosen, you would never experience fear or doubt again.
Nice. Very nice. Very nice quote. I'm kind of out of words. I need to think about it for a second because it's so beautiful.
Yeah, I had that one in my iPhone notes section for a long time, and I would spend time on it. I would read it, I would study it, I would walk and meditate on it. And, I think so often that, we say, well, I'm going to wake up tomorrow, I'm going to be a humble leader. Well, I wish you all the luck. And thinking that there's another one of I had this along the right side. It was from Hafiz, is that even after all this time, the sun never says to the earth, you owe me. Just think about a love like that. It can light up the whole world.
Yeah. Wow.
Right. Is you recognize that and you go to a state and place of gratitude, and recognize that the greatest things that have achieved and some of the greatest contributors to our world have done so with tremendous humility. They haven't done so they can get that perfect photo opportunity.
Yeah.
They did it because they had a heart of service, and whether it's Mahatma Gandhi, whether that was Mother Teresa, whomever your reference is, in terms of an individual that you saw or see in your life as a great contributor, rarely in the moment of tremendous contribution were they worried about whether somebody had a great photo angle or picture angle. And
for sure.
I call it a heart of service, not a mind of service. So
a what? Come again?
It's a heart. You must. So some people, they say, well, I'm going to do this thing for you, so maybe you'll do something in return, right? That's serving out of your mind. It's strategy. It's strategy. It's trying to curry favor, right? We need to have a heart of service. It comes from humility, gratitude.
Okay, and so besides of humility, what else do you think is lacking? Because obviously, maybe being effective, like a bit more either more tactical things.
Yeah. So from a tactical perspective, from a leadership perspective, number one, I think, I watched this, and it's something that I had to grow into, is that do you have documented processes and procedures? So do you know what you're going to do and how you're going to run your business? Have you defined and written clear outcomes and objectives for your organization, right? And I think one of the key things that a lot of people don't consider is your business will succeed at the level of your least disciplined behavior. So your business will succeed at your least disciplined behavior. So there's certain behaviors that your business just won't do well if you're not executing on them, right? Whatever that might be, whatever business you're running, whatever you're selling, whatever you're doing, there are core functions that you must do. And there are one of them that you're not doing that well. You just aren't, right? We all aren't, right? I mean, I can look at any of the businesses I run, and there are some of them that could be performing better. And part of the reason not performing better is because there's a particular behavior I don't like to do and haven't figured out who to outsource this to, who likes to do it better than I do, right? So I have to do it, so I avoid it. So one of the key things a lot of people do is, and it's coming back to that discipline piece, is they're not, number one, they don't know what buttons they have to press to make a successful business. They don't know the data. They don't know those numbers. And then when they do them, they're like, well, I don't like to do that. Okay. Like, what do you want? Right? Did anyone tell you this was going to be easy? What did you expect? And so there are key pieces of every business that if you don't know what it is, you're going to fail. Sorry. And once you know what those key matrices are, you have to, your business will only be as successful as the one you're doing the poorest.
Weakest link. You're as powerful as your weakest link.
You're powerful as your weakest link.
And so let's say I'm an entrepreneur and I'm struggling, like my sales have gone down. I'm not quite sure what to do. So is there like a framework or a practice that you suggest doing? Journaling, or maybe writing all the stuff down and giving yourself points? I don't know. What do you suggest doing?
Yeah. So there's two reasons a business is typically failing. And one is because it's sales. You're not selling the product, right? The second is you're not controlling cost. You don't know what it costs to actually sell the product. So those are two different ways that a business can fail. And too many online businesses are like, I did $1.2 million in sales last year. What'd you make? Like what did you hit? I made $3,000. Well, that's fantastic. What that means, you just made Facebook a boatload of money because your Facebook ads are ineffective and you're spending too much on client acquisition. So Merry Christmas to Facebook. No wonder their stock went up. Thank you very much. Are you serious? So first and foremost, you have to ask, like, what problem does your product solve? And who has the problem, right? And are you getting your product in front of the people who have the actual problem, right? So like my wife has a product she sells online and 93% of her customers are female. So she better be hanging out in front of females. She better be hanging out in front of women, right? Like that's, she shouldn't be worrying about she shouldn't be looking at her business going, well, what my problem is I need to sell to more men. No. They're not, that's not who's interested in her book and her journal at all. She sells a journal. And, so the first thing is you got to know your customer. You got to know who they are, who's buying from you consistently, and know that data. You look at your Instagram and look at the insights and see what the data is and who's following you and see who's buying from you and get really clear on that. And then what sort of look at your competition, right? What sort of ads are they creating? What kind of material and marketing resources are they creating? Like there's a reason, right? Like look at the person who's like, I look at Gary Vaynerchuk. I look at these, I look at Jay Shetty. I look at these guys and gals that are just crushing it online. And I'm going, there's a reason they have layered media where they have a video with stuff over top of it with other things going on. Like, they have $1 million budgets. I do not. There's a reason they're doing it that way. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. That seems to be working. I'm going to go borrow that idea, make it my own, right? And if, assuming that their market is mine. So understand what market so you got to first understand your customer. Second, you got to understand what market you're in and who's leaders in your market, and go do your research and see what those folks are doing. And if they're producing ad content that looks drastically different than yours, right? There's all kinds of resources. Like get on Google and see how to create media as close to theirs as they can. And then test, right? I mean, test the ads and don't, see what connects with your audience and look for that feedback and be willing to pull the plug in failure. And then you've got to know, like, if the issue is profit. So I'll share a story. Like my wife and I, so she's been running her online business for 5 years. And we can go into more of this detail, but I'll give kind of a macro element. I said, Lauren, we've got to get this down simple. My degree's in finance, her degree's in journalism, right? Like when we're teaching our kids, I'm doing the math homework, she's doing the reading in English. Like my daughter in the second grade is a better speller than I already am. Like she's got me whooped already in the second grade, right? So we all have our strengths. We all have our intelligences, right? And I said, honey, so let me look at your data. Let me reach numbers. So I just start crunching numbers, right? And I said, I believe we can get this down to one or two things you need to track, right? Which was, and what we found for her is what was a conversion? What's her conversion for ads? Like, what are you converting? How much are you spending? And we looked at the price of her product, how much Amazon was charging for pick and storage and all these different things. We found out, okay, if you spend more than X to convert a client, to convert somebody to buy, you're losing money. You're going negative.
Yeah.
Kill any ad that gets over this threshold, right? If it hits this, I don't care if you like it. I don't care how many hours you spend on it.
Exactly.
I don't care if you think it's, I said, it's either filling it or you got to kill it.
Exactly.
So you've got to get down to knowing those baseline foundational numbers in your business and be just super savage about it and not get emotional about it. You may spend hours and hours on the content that you're pushing out, but if you are not treating ruthlessly, you got to be a ruthless CFO of your own business.
Yeah, I totally agree. And at the end of the day, it boils down to data. And just as you said, if the ad isn't performing, if it's not profitable, just kill it. No hard feeling. It's all good, but no reason to keep on paying Facebook. So
no. And you can't own enough Facebook stock for it to return, to work out for you. You're not getting your money back. And, I think so often, like, if you're going to be in the e-commerce space, right, or online at all, if you're going to create an online presence, you've got to test. Like, you've got to have the heart of curiosity. Just be curious. Stay out of judgment and be like, hey, I'm just wondering how this will resonate with people, right? And is it fun? So have fun creating the content and just be curious. Just instead of saying, okay, I'm going to create the best piece of content, right? And this is going to be it. Be in a state of curiosity to say, I'm just really curious how my audience and people are going to resonate with this. And I think if you're at a place of curiosity and adventure and treat it as an adventure and a journey, it's just a little shift of how you see what you're creating, and see it as a dating process, right? We've all dated before, where you're at that first date and you're wondering, like, I wonder if you've told this joke before. You're going to go with the joke, right? And you share the joke, right? And the girl or gal just doesn't laugh. You're like, okay, I'm learning here. Like, that joke kills with my other friends, but this person doesn't find it funny, right? You don't end the date. You don't stand up and storm off and leave the date because she didn't laugh or he didn't laugh at your joke. You're just at a place of curiosity and uncovering, and it just allows you to innovate at a much faster speed.
I agree. It's just, for me, just experimenting as if I was in the lab. I'm taking two different chemicals and I'm just combining them and see if it resonates with the crowd. So for me, it's all about experimenting. I wanted to ask you a question regarding what you said before. I totally agree with the fact that we should just see what the big guys are doing and maybe try to get inspired or even in a way copy them. But sometimes I question myself, maybe they are doing this, maybe it seems like it's working for them because they are Gary Vaynerchuk. Or maybe this is working despite the fact that it isn't good.
Yes.
You get what I mean? So
yes.
So
yes, I completely understand.
How do you approach this? Because sometimes, if listen, like Ronaldo, he does 100,000 sit-ups every day, and he has abs, but it's not necessarily the right way to create abs, But he has abs despite of the fact that he's doing 1,000 crunches every day.
Yeah, it's because his diet's good, right?
Yeah, exactly. For example.
Yeah. So, I don't just go out and take stuff from people, obviously, right? Like, you got to do your homework, right? You got to do your homework. For example, like when we launched this podcast, I didn't have a Rode Procaster and all the mic stuff that I've invested in, my podcast. And because I don't know if it matters, right? I don't know. Well, then I started doing my research and doing more research, and I'm like, oh, like, that matters. That matters a ton, right? And so I think that it's a combination of looking for inspiration and also, like, there already is a Gary Vaynerchuk. And I think he's doing a pretty good job being himself.
For sure.
So don't try to be him.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's more the methodology
Mm-hmm.
than the content, right? Like don't be him, right? He swears a lot. Like he swears a whole lot,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I don't think if he was Gary Vee, he'd get away with it. I don't think he would.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never gone back to dig into his early content.
Mm-hmm.
He swore as much then as he does now. It's not something I'd recommend people do. I really personally wouldn't, because I think you're going to alienate more people than you're going to invite into your platform and your speaking. So you make an excellent point. I don't know, I think the thing that resonates now more than anything though is authenticity.
Exactly.
It's just authenticity. You've got to be you. So use them as inspiration to how to deliver your unique authenticity.
Mm-hmm. Agree. And also a word of caution. I think that as I became a bit more, I don't know if it's humble to say I became a bit more humble, because it's kind of a paradox, but I realized that a lot of the times I didn't even realize what they are doing or what was the motive. So sometimes you just see something and you assume that there's no thought behind it, but more often than not, they are doing things behind the scenes that you don't even realize.
Mm-hmm.
So
this piece of you see one piece of content blow up,
mm-hmm.
and you're like, but what you don't realize that they've delivered two pieces of content before it,
exactly.
one piece of content after. There was really kind of this series of content that you couldn't even see it happening. It's so brilliant, right? And you see the one piece of content that gets like 2.1 million downloads, and you're like, whoa, I should go do that. And you're like, but you're missing point A and B. You just do C, you don't do D. You're like, why isn't this converting? Yeah.
This is the problem with overnight success. It's never an overnight success.
yeah. It's this. So this is the gift of what you did. So the gift of bodybuilding or ultra marathon running, right? Is, I'm not saying you can't, right? But it's really unlikely you're going to get up and just go out today for a 50-mile run.
Yeah.
Right. And it's really unlikely you're going to do well in a bodybuilding contest, right, if you don't prepare for it.
Exactly.
Right. And so the gift of doing those things is that you set a big audacious goal, and in Built to Last, Jim Collins' books, he talked about a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal, and you set one. And now in business, and it took patience is an attribute that you had to develop to get there, discipline, grit, all those things. And so now when you show up at business, it's not like you leave those lessons behind. They come with you, right? And so when you say the words, well, not an overnight success, you actually know what that means, right? And so you carry that into your business, and you have the opportunity, you have the tool set to be more patient, because you had to go do it at this thing over here called being a bodybuilder.
Exactly. And when people come to you, so what should they expect? How does the onboarding process look like, or how is the interaction? How does the interaction look like? Do you set goals like 6 months goals, 1 year long goals, or how does the whole process look like?
You mean for me as a financial advisor?
Yeah, or for coaching or for advice, or obviously it varies, I guess, but
yeah. So I don't coach. I'm a I tried to spell being a professional coach, and there are things that Kyle is very, very good at, and I don't get when people are resistant to grow and change. It confuses me. I don't get it. Like, I have moments, don't get me wrong. Like, I have times where I'll get stuck and someone needs to kick me a little bit to get me moving. They need to put the chains around me and pull me out of the mud. But it's not a place I try to stay very long. So I don't do professional coaching. I'm a big fan of it, big promoter of it. I share my wisdom in my podcast, and those who, want to gain that, and it's right for, Merry Christmas. There you go. If it's not, that's okay too.
Cool.
As a financial advisor,
Mm-hmm.
which is I've owned and ran my own financial planning practice for over almost 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And, I take my clients through the same process that I shared is a self-discovery process of understanding who you are. I think there's such a misunderstanding in this world that they believe that money is, a goal to work towards. And money is just a tool. It's just a tool. It's a medium to results. We've agreed that, this piece of paper of dead presidents or dead notables on it is worth something, right? Well, I mean, that's pretty crazy to consider that wherever you live in this world that you're listening to this, that at some point in time, it's called a fiat money system, if you care, that piece of paper has no real tangible value other than the value that we've all agreed that it has. Yet we'll give up everything to chase it. That actually has real value. We'll give up relationships. We'll give up our health. We'll give up our peace. We'll give up everything. And in my world, as an financial advisor, if I do nothing but help people accumulate wealth, but lose their self in the process, then what's the purpose of having the wealth to begin with? Why have it? And so what's interesting is that we take a very different approach than most people in my world, which is we help walk somebody through. And sometimes takes a long time. We may be managing their money as we continue to walk them through this, which is to help them understand who they are and why would they want to be financially independent to begin with.
Interesting. So the scope of your services is kind of different from what one would imagine financial advisors. So one would imagine that you're going to tell them where to invest and stuff like that, but you give like a wider, more holistic approach.
Yes.
Correct to say?
Yeah. Because here's the thing, I'm not impressed by how much money you have. I don't care how much you have. I don't care. I legitimately don't care. I'm not impressed, right? At all. Like, you can stand in front of the expensive plane and wear your expensive watches and rings and cars and all that jazz. It doesn't tell me who you are as a human being. How are you going to show up in the darkest, most difficult times for yourself and the other people you care about in your life? Now we're talking. How are you growing as a human? How are you going to be better tomorrow than you were today? How are you learning? How are you impacting? How are you serving? How are you showing up with grace, humility? These are the things that make you a wonderful human being and many other attributes. It's not how much is in your bank account. And what happens for so many people along this journey in life is that they begin to pursue wealth as a goal in and of itself. And it should never be. It should never be. Like, I've never been at a funeral, right? And this is a way to really anchor what I'm saying. We've all, unfortunately, especially with COVID, we've lost so many people globally to this pandemic. And before that, people were passing away as well, right? And I've never been at a funeral. I don't know if this has ever happened in any of the countries you've lived, where someone stands up and says, Grandma, one of the things I remember my grandmother the most is she had just an enormous bank account. Like, one of the things that was really meaningful for me on Saturdays when we get together after synagogue is we'd sit down and we'd look about how much money my grandmother had. Like, are you kidding me? It's just ridiculous, right? Like, no. You talk about her as a human being, right? And the only thing that you may talk about your grandmother, about anything she accomplished, she's like, man, she could make a great brisket, or she could, and she made great black keys, or whatever the food she cooked. Maybe it was whatever your thing was, right? I mean, it's whatever grandma was cooking that was delicious food, right?
Exactly.
That's it, right? Like, anything else, it was about how she showed up in your life. How did she make you feel as a human being? Well, there's no difference, right? Whether in business, whether it's personally, professionally, spiritually, it doesn't matter. Like, the measurement of who we are as people is not how much money we got in the bank. And so the big thing I would say to every entrepreneur that's listening to this conversation, right, is if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, the focus should not be how much stuff you can sell. Is if you can't look at your product and say, I fundamentally am making a difference in people's lives, and I fundamentally care about that passionately. Like, if you hear I interviewed my wife about her journal, the I Am Journal, and she is, it's been impactful in her own life. right? Is sitting down and journaling daily isn't been impactful for her. She created the product for herself and then she sold it to other people, right? So fundamentally, I get so thrown by this is that, we as a society we bow to the altar of wealth. Who gives a damn? So irrelevant.
I agree.
Sorry, I get fired up.
No,
I don't know what time it is there.
No, it's all good.
The heat.
It's all good. It's all good. No, but it's I totally agree. I don't have anything more to add because I agree with everything that you said. And there's a one quote that I like, that money is a great servant but a terrible master.
Yes, 100%. Can you imagine this? Like, hey, like you meet somebody at the gym, right, or wherever you meet them, right? You guys are gonna go have a beer, or go out for coffee, or what have you, right? And before you sit down, you're like, hey, like I just want to ask you something. What's that? So how much money are you worth? I just, if you don't have enough money, I don't want to be friends with you. Yet somehow we filter our own wealth, our own self-worth through that, right? Like if you say that out loud, like, and you're like, that's ridiculous, Kyle. I would never decide my friends by how much money they have. Well, then why are you using that as the tool to measure yourself, or your business, or your own accomplishments, your own worthiness, right? So, I think sometimes the thing that we forget to do is to take this idea of how we measure the yardstick for our own life, take it and apply it to somebody else. Would you measure somebody else like that? Would you measure your kids like that?
Yeah.
And if the answer is no, then maybe that's a terrible yardstick.
But what would you answer to the argument of some people that say that the amount of money that you've accumulated is in correlation to the values that you provided to society?
So there's a company here, and I won't name it because I don't want to get myself in a lawsuit. But there's a company that manufactured a very powerful pain medicine that was a heroin derivative in the United States, right? Okay. And they used they used unfair advantages to sell what was essentially heroin legally through the pharmaceutical process here in the United States. As a result of it, the folks that own this company are worth billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars. And they got levied. They've had to pay some major fines, but nowhere incommensurate to the amount of lives these drugs killed and took, right? So I would kindly remind that person to wake up, and to remember that in this world, you can make money by not necessarily doing the right thing, right? And it doesn't always catch up with you in the way that you think it will. So I think money's a pretty poor measurement of impact at all. I know this fundamentally. Is there are people's lives I've changed through the wisdom I have about money and finance that I've done so for free. I've just given them free advice. I've showed up. I cared enough. I gave them wisdom. I gave them an outline of what to do. They took my advice and they changed their own advice, and I got paid nothing for it. Nothing. And so I don't think money is a very good measurement of impact at all. At all. Like if you want to know how much impact you're having, stop the Facebook ads. Stop stop the Facebook ads. Stop the Instagram ads, right? And see who follows. See how many people you actually like. Are you making impact, or are you just a good marketer?
Interesting. Oof. Thank you so much, Kyle. It was like a lot of stuff to think about, and I'm going to re-listen to this because I really love the fact that you combine moral in such a it's not an easy conversation to talk about money, and a lot of subjects related to money are like taboos. But I felt that this talk was very also inspiring and very authentic and very true. So a lot of stuff to rethink about. where can people get more of you, listen more to your podcast or hear about your services?
First, thank you so much for allowing me to be on your show. I think e-commerce is truly one of the greatest pathways for financial prosperity for people. Don't get lured into it that being easy. Do your homework and learn. So you can follow me on, so our podcast is called Legacy on Purpose. We interview New York Times bestselling authors, endurance athletes, TEDx speakers, and incredible entrepreneurs. And so you can find Legacy on Purpose pretty much anywhere you can download a podcast: Spotify, Apple iTunes, Amazon Music, the whole bit. Our primary social outlet is Instagram, so it's just Legacy on Purpose. I answer all the DMs, so if you like what we shared and want to connect with me, you can DM me on Instagram. I respond to the majority of them. As long as they're G, I respond. G-rated comments. So
you get a lot that are not G-rated.
Well, you have people are sending all kinds of crazy stuff on Instagram, right? I got a wife and almost 4 kids. Like I got no interest. Thank you very much. I don't know what you're trying to sell, but I'm not buying it. Okay. So, and then it's legacyonpurposepodcast.com is our website. Legacyonpurposepodcast.com. So, but first and foremost, you are just producing incredible content here. And I hope, if anything else, like if you have one podcast to listen to, don't come on mine, stay here, stay with this great content that you're delivering. And, I'm glad you didn't take your shirt off. You would have made me feel like, ultramarathon runners aren't known for big biceps. So thanks for keeping your
I went back to eating a ton of food, so you won't feel embarrassed if I took off my shirt. It's all good. You have to take a rest, you have to take a rest. You can't.
Yes, you do. You have to rest. You have to reset, and that's where the wisdom comes. That's where a lot of those lessons come.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Kyle. Have a lovely day.
Truly pleasure.
Bye. Take care.
You too. Bye now.